friends, this is Pastor Artur Pawlowski. I am here with a friend of mine, a man that, in my opinion, Canada desperately needs. Church desperately needs. I'm here with Grant Abraham. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, a little bit about his vision for this country, and why. I think the most important question to you is, why bother? Why jump into this? Once God said to me, the politics is like a human manure in a sewer canal. When you get too close, you stink, and you need a shower of his righteousness. So it's a vicious place, it's evil. There are lots of actors, bad actors, con artists, liars, people without honor, mercy. Why should Christian, a born-again, fired-up, a man of God, get involved into this craziness of hate?
Well, Arthur, awesome to be with you. You know what? I've seen your heart in Calgary here. You go out and feed the poor, and you woke this country up with your Nazi speech around the world. Woke the world up in many ways too. So it's a real privilege to be here. You are a friend, and I think that is the baseline question that we need to be talking about in Canada, indeed in the nations around the world. Is what does God have to say about our nations? And I believe that it's God that sets the nations in place, and we know that in the world that we live in right now, it's not just about politics. It's about the conflict between good and evil, light and darkness, and that's actually what we're seeing play out in Canada. Have played out in Canada. Canadians through COVID have seen a scenario happen where they're asking themselves, where has our country gone? Where has this nation gone that we were so proud of? That's certainly been the case out of COVID. I've looked at this scenario now for quite a few years, watching what's happened with the shifting in relation to the burden of proof in a legal scenario, or the innocent until proven guilty. Some of these things that are happening that most Canadians might not even notice, and yet we were all wakened up during COVID to say, wow, people can't fly, people can't, people can't keep their jobs unless they're coerced into taking a vaccine.
Go to a restaurant.
You go to a restaurant. And, the real answer for me is that I'm here doing what I'm doing because I feel called to this. And this started for me in 2022. With what I call a God interruption into this space, because Canada needs people that are actually prepared up and speak the truth to power, and in a way that's actually has a heart for the Canadian people, because I ultimately believe that God has a purpose for Canada. The foundation stones of this nation have been set with the principles that flow out of a Christian perspective. And one of the things that I say as I move around this country talking and sharing and doing politics is that the supremacy of God and the rule of law is a framework that has worked. And whether you're an atheist or you hate God or the concept of God or whatever, it has set in place principles that have made this nation a peace-orientated nation, a nation that has abundant blessing, a nation that there's been generations of people that has made this a nation that is the wonder of the world in terms of wanting to immigrate to. And except now we're seeing the inside and the structure of our nation implode. And the big challenge for us is that we're not recognizing that there's a value disconnection, because people have now disassociated themselves from the values that built the nation. We have unplugged them from the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And so, and one of the biggest challenges in our country is that the church is failing to see that they have been groomed. They have been enculturated to believe and to buy into this separation of the secular and the sacred. And they say, hey, you know what? I'm a good Canadian, therefore I can't take my values and comment on them in the public square because that's rude or that's not a thing that culturally Canadians do. And actually, we are being enculturated with things that violate our very understanding of what we are as a people, what we are as a culture, as a group of people with values and traditions. And when I say that, I mean things like Bill C-4 happening, where the Conservative Party, in that particular case, unanimously supported the insertion of government in that amazing relationship between parents and children.
Because we do not have in Canada Conservative Party.
Well, I mean, that's...
For the record, the so-called Conservative Party has nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with conservative values.
Right, and I'm with you there. It's conservative in name only.
That's it.
It's here to gaslight Canadians.
That's not your father's party. That party does not exist anymore. Just like in the United States of America, you've got the Demon Rats. That's not the Kennedy's party. That's gone. That's not even close. It's not. There's nothing that the grandparents voted for that we have right now. And for all the naysayers, I just want to know. I just want you to know that Canada was founded on the biblical principles, the Bible and the Lord's Word. In Parliament Hill to this day, we have over 20, I think 25 scriptures on the Parliament Hill that you quoted the preamble to our highest law in the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The preamble states, whereas Canada acknowledges the supremacy of God and the rule of law. When there is no God, there is no rule of law. What we have right now in our beloved China, as we call it right now, is lawlessness. Also, I want the people to understand how far we have fallen. Our national anthem is actual prayer to God.
Correct.
It's a prayer to the God of the Bible, which is remarkable. It's incredible. It's amazing. The ruler supreme who hears humble prayer. I mean, this is, to me, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets, where the people were not allowed to worship God in freedom. Everything was controlled. The church, the state church was controlled. And to come to this country and saying yes to the values and the laws of my new home, we received a Bible.
Yeah.
Of course, this seems like 150 years ago now, but it was not that long ago when the government was saying, hey, we are the desire of the world. Why? Because we built our nation on the Word of God. You are coming here. I wanted to ask you something. What are we observing? Are we observing emigration or an invasion? Because when I came to this country with my family, it took me 5 years. I had to go through a medical, I had to go through all kinds of documents, criminal record. I mean, it took us 5 years of paperwork and money to come to this country. Right now, it looks like you can just show up at the border and you'll get the cell phone, you'll get a hotel and a meal and some hefty checks for your monthly expenses. And all those people that I see that are escaping problems in their country, I mean, look at their clothes. They look like multi-million-dollar children. Young people, mostly young adults, and you can see them all over the malls with lots of money, buying left and right, while Canadians that work very hard cannot afford healthcare anymore. And don't believe that healthcare is free. It's not.
So let me just make one comment, because I honestly believe that one of our root issues in this country is that we have disconnected our value, the understanding of our value framework being plugged into the supremacy of God and the rule of law, because that is the mechanism by which we say no and yes to things. And right now in this nation, we're saying yes to everything because we don't have a value system that is actually plugged into a constitutional framework that allows the people to say no. And that's our problem. And I remind Canadians when I talk about the preamble to the Charter, and I like to remind people, as I think as Brian Peckford does, that preamble to the Charter means that every single section of the preamble is actually begun by that preamble first.
It sets the tone.
It sets the tone for every point on the Charter. But my point here is that when we talk about the supremacy of God and the rule of law, we're talking about the Christian God. We're talking about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And whatever you think about that, that is our history, and it's not going to be airbrushed out. And I make the point to all Canadians, whether they believe in God or not, is that is the framework of our freedom, because the nature of of Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is that he gives us the right to freely reject him. And that's that freedom that gives us the freedom and the strength in this nation to build the kind of country that has been built, that people our hearts are broken over because they're wondering where their country's gone. And so the challenge we have in this country right now is that we only ever scratch into the symptoms and never into the root issues. And this is why I like having this conversation with you, because there's actually courage in this room to auger into the much deeper issues. When we talk about immigration in this country, we have to look and say, what is the plan? Why in all of my life has the immigration to this country been between 75 and 150,000 people in a year? But from January to June this year, there's been over 850,000 people brought into Canada. And this is where our concept of multiculturalism is failing. I find it tremendously interesting that Quebec has simply said, we're going to reject multiculturalism. The only policy that we're applying to Quebec is integration, which means there's not going to be a ghettoization in the nation. You're going to become Quebecers. And so that's exactly what we need to be doing in Canada, except that we are failing to see in this nation, and this is where I keep coming back to the discussion with Canadians across this country, is that we have forgotten that Justin Trudeau told us that we would be the first post-nation state. We've forgotten that Justin Trudeau has told us that COVID has provided us with an opportunity for a reset. We have forgotten that the nation is the victim of severe and sustained foreign interference that's undermining the health and goodwill of our people, our democratic institutions.
About a dozen members of parliament in bed with China. Where are the names, and why those people are not being prosecuted?
And this is why you're right about your comments about the Conservative Party, because what do they conserve? They don't conserve family values. They don't conserve the relationship with the United States. They don't protect the national security. What are they conserving? And this is the point. And this is why I've gone to the extraordinary lengths to set up a federal party to say that Canada is actually being betrayed, because what the Conservative Party is doing is supporting the Liberal government by their omission to act. And we've had now 4 federal elections that they've lost. They're losing because they continue to compete with the Liberal government to go left. And when have you ever heard a Conservative leader, whether it be Andrew Scheer or Aaron O'Toole or Pierre Polyv, ever stand up and say, Liberal Party or Prime Minister, can you please explain to the nation what a post-nation state means? Can you please tell us what you mean by reset? Canada did not sign up, Canadians did not sign up to have their social contract revoked that we understood that is the value, culture, value, and traditions of this nation. And yet what's happening is that the Liberal agenda, and I would say the Conservative agenda too, by omission, is setting a table, a banqueting table for Canadians of a meal of communism, and they're draping it in the current Canadian flag.
I disagree with you. I don't think that it's done by omission. They are involved in this takeover. I'll prove it to you what Stephen Harper did. I'm sure you're aware it was Stephen Harper's government that signed us into the Paris Accord with Pierre Paul.
Yeah, absolutely.
The green garbage, climate craziness. and also it was the Stephen Harper's government. So for those that do not know, Stephen Harper was the conservative prime minister in Canada for a number of years. It was him that brought WEF
correct.
to Canada. So we're not talking about omission. We're talking about those people actively have betrayed Canadians, sold us into this global cabal, whatever you want to call it.
Artur, I think you're absolutely right. When I use the word omission, I'm referring to the action of what they're not doing. When we delve into that deeper, as you've just done, and start to open up what their intention is, that's the question that every Canadian needs to ask, because we're seeing this omission, we're seeing this action of not doing what they should be doing. And for me, starting in about 2019, I had to look and say, well, look, what's going on here? Are these guys lazy?
No.
Are they bored and they're not engaging? Are they stupid? Maybe they're just negligent. They see this happening, but they don't understand what's really going on. They should be acting, but they're negligent. Are they reckless? You know, this is the incremental pathway to, and then I got to, are they complicit? And then I got to complicitness, and I saw such a gross failure to confront these issues. I mean, the foreign interference issue is a huge issue. You're right. We just had a federal election where there was 12 MPs who are under the influence of foreign governments or direct agents of them, and the Canadian people don't know, and Mr. Polyv does, but he won't get the security clearance to be able to actually validate the information so that he can give it to the Canadian people. And he uses the very flimsy and in a pathetic defense, frankly, that he might have to go to jail. And there's, you know, there are exemptions in our secrecy legislation that allow for disclosure of information if it's in the interest of protecting the nation. So that's a rubbish defense. But I finally got to the place when I went from negligent to reckless to complicit to now I hold the view that it's a betrayal.
I think they're
it's treason.
I think they're part of the same goal, if you will. We're being led to the same slaughterhouse. And I said to the people many times that the Liberal Party and the NDP, I call the Liberals the Nazis and the NDP the communists of today. And of course, the so-called Conservative Party, they're the Judas Iscariot, they're the traitors. If I had the power, those people would be charged with treason. I believe that they are leading us into the same place, except some parties will lead us there faster. Conservative so-called party is leading us to the same place a little bit slower. I actually prefer my enemy, open enemy, than a hidden enemy pretending that he is my friend. And I think that's what Canadians do not understand. They believe in the colors, in the system of their grandfathers and their fathers. I remember talking to people and they said, I voted my grandfather voted for conservatives, my father voted conservatives, I will die voting conservatives. Then you're playing stupid.
Yeah.
You're playing stupid, you don't understand what's really going on, because you have to, in the Bible, it says you shall know them by what? By their clever appearances, or the way they dress, the way they smile, or the way they eat their apples. No, you shall know them by their fruits.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me, go back in time and look how Pierre Paul voted. You don't need anything more. Just look the pattern of betrayal to the conservative values. So, in other words, we have no representatives at this moment. They all have betrayed Canada and Canadians. And then you have law enforcement agencies. And I want to ask you this question because there has been a big news in the past few days about our CP. You know, my personal opinion, the way they conducted themselves, the way they lied, cheated, and abused their powers in the past decades, not just because of the COVID era. I believe this is one of the most corrupted institutions in our country, the RCMP. But lately, they came out of the closet, if you will, and they stated publicly in front of cameras that the Christian values or the family values or traditional, whatever you
Correct,
want to
traditional, yeah.
spin it.
Yeah.
Traditional values are
Extremists.
and
Yeah.
very dangerous. In other words, if you're a father, if you're a husband, if you go to church, God forbid, then you are a terrorist in their opinions and their views. And I've seen this pattern coming from the Prime Minister's office multiple times during the regime of the Trudeau Castro Caligula, as we call him. And then, of course, Carney is, in my opinion, is worse than Trudeau, because Trudeau was a brainless, just cruising around, riding the wave, if you will, selfies and all that stuff. Carney is a sophisticated enemy. He is very well equipped, well connected. He's a globalist, and he has a lot of money, and he has no problem. In my opinion, he has no soul. Therefore, he has no problem killing, murdering, pillaging, destroying this beautiful country. So what is your view when you see law enforcement agencies aiming at the good citizens that built this country and made it great?
Well, again, what's going on in this country is the declaration that Canada will be a post-nation state. And when there's no discussion about what that means in terms of post-nationalism, it means that there's an agenda within the government. There's a term that people use referred to a fifth column. And a fifth column is a cohort within a governmental structure that is actually working against what should be the agenda or the wishes of the people. And that is what I think is going on in our country. And we can't understand actually what's happening in this nation until we understand that there is this cohort that is working against what the fabric of what Canadians love about our culture, values, and traditions in this nation. And so what you're talking about here is something that, unless we put the glasses on to see the bigger agenda, to change the DNA, to change the molecular structure of this nation away from a nation where families are strong, that build strong communities, that build strong provinces, and we're a nation of people that are proud about our heritage. We have been turned against ourselves, and the government has actually moved towards a divisiveness that is actually separating people and making them hate each other and have fights, while they move along the agenda and our laws to actually deconstruct the nation.
So divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. And we can't respond to the challenges that we have in this nation until we actually see the plan. And this is the problem. Like when you're talking about conservatives, well, you're right. You're kind of facetiously saying, well, people will say, well, I've been a conservative all my life. I have a very impeccable conservative pedigree as a Western Canadian in this country, and my family went through all of the stages of the Conservative Party right back to the Progressive Conservative mandate. That kind of turned into the Reform Party, that turned back into the Conservative Party. So it's not that conservative values are dead. It's just that the party representing them and bears the name, as you said and made the point perfectly at the beginning, is that they don't hold those values because they're not conserving anything.
So here is a question, and by the way, if you have a question, please submit the question. I'll do my best to monitor the chat here. If you want to ask a question, Grant, please do so. But there is a comment here about basically that the new party, it doesn't stand a chance and is not going to be able to make a dent or make a difference. I find this very upsetting for me, because if you know history, and that's what I do, I teach history, not just theology, you know that all of those parties started in the living rooms. They all started with few people coming together, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, and they had a vision, an idea. Why? Because they were dissatisfied with the status quo, and they wanted to change that. So they came together and said, hey, this party, those people, the king, whatever the tyrant was, because don't kid yourself, we have tyrants right now in the government. they were sick and tired of the corruption, and they decided, okay, let's do something about this corruption. How a party starts. It doesn't start with 5 million people, members. How the party starts. Tell us how the party starts, and you can go back maybe a little bit in history, because all the ruling parties right now started the same way, with few people sipping coffee, just like we are doing here,
Yeah, that's right.
and saying, hey, those tyrants need to go. How are we going to do it?
Well, it's an interesting question. I'll maybe come back to that as part B of my answer. Do you know, it's an interesting thing because I get these kind of questions a lot. And one of the questions that I get is, how can one guy in a by-election make a difference in a nation? And my question back to Canadians is, how many Conservative MPs have we had in this country over the last 10 years who have been muzzled and whipped and nothing has been confronted? And in this by-election, it's interesting because there's not going to be any argument about splitting votes, so a Liberal MP might win. And it's also a very interesting conversation to make this very real in terms of Battle River Crowfoot, which is a by-election that I'm in right now, running against Pierre Polyv, because Pierre Polyv is coming to Alberta to kind of wave the Canadian flag and I think try and repress this strength of Alberta sovereignty, Alberta independence, but he's coming in saying Alberta needs to continue to pay equalization. Alberta's coming, or I'm coming.
Which is a theft.
Which is a theft. It's nearly $1 trillion since 1960 has left this province to subsidize basically central Canada.
It's a taxation without representation.
It is. So he's coming, and he has a mandate for equalization. He has a federal mandate to keep this breaking country together under a broken constitution. He is coming to what is a very Christian riding in central Alberta and saying we're going to continue to maintain our position on no abortion. Where he's coming to Alberta and he's telling parents that we voted to criminalize you if you stop your child going trans.
Yeah.
And people are not happy at all with the value deterioration within the Conservative Party. So I think this is actually a really interesting opportunity. Why do we need a new party? Because at some point we're not going to have a country, and I'm going to do what I need to do, coming back to your very first question, because this is my mandate. It's to confront the truth and give Canadians an opportunity to actually stand up and confront and deal with the issues that are causing our country to be deteriorated. And so the real question here to come back to that you're asking me is, how do you start a party? Well, I'll tell you what, this party was birthed out of the Conservative leadership race in 2022 because I was moving around this country and I was only driving because I wasn't vaccinated and because I couldn't fly. And so I was only doing my rounds in BC and Alberta because that was as far as I could drive. And as I told Conservative people, because I was a Conservative, what was really going on in our nation and what the government was doing and what post-nationalism meant. And I was asking them the painfully rhetorical question, why aren't the Conservative leaders not confronting these issues of what it means for Canada to be a post-nation state? That means we're giving away our sovereignty and we're being ruled by the UN or some other power structure behind the UN. That's what post-nationalism means. That's why Brexit. That's why the British left the European Union.
That's right.
Because they didn't want other people controlling their culture, values, traditions, laws, borders, and money. And we're in that same confrontation right now. So this party started because there's a movement within conservatism that rejected the Conservative Party of Canada. And now they know that our backs are up against a wall because the country's being betrayed and we're about to lose this nation. But for the providential hand of God. And if you want to know what I really think about this issue, about how can one person do this, or how can a few people birth a party, this is no different than what the covenantal mandate of the Israelites had as they had to approach the promised land. And what happened? They sent 12 spies in, and 10 came back and said, hey, you know what? The giants are too big. You know, it's a great place. There's milk and honey and all that, but the walls are too high. They're too thick. The giants are too big. We can't do it. And 2 people came back and said, yeah, that's all true, but this is our mandate, and with God we can do this. And so this is where I do integrate faith and politics, and I say we actually need to recognize that this nation has drifted away from the foundation stones that built it. And this is why Alberta is so significant, because it's the only place left in Canada with the will, the strength, the faith, the tenacity, and the foundational stones in faith to actually resist the darkness and tyranny that is coming with post-nationalism and ultimately a Marxist, techno-Marxist, fascist control mechanism that is moving us very quickly towards Agenda 2030 and digital cages, digital ID, and
15
digital
minutes.
currency. 15-minute cities. You know, we can talk about all that.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I grew up in a system like this. Everything I observed in the past, not just 5 years, but in the past 20 years, is leading us into a police state, totalitarian regime, a total control. And it seems that people are not realizing what is happening to them. I mean, people that were born here, people like me, we get it right away. We can smell it because we grew up in hell. So when the hell is approaching, we can feel it. This is just not good. But I want to ask you something that is very controversial. I've lost supporters, believe it or not. I've lost supporters. And those people that are watching me are supposed to be Christians. But I've lost a lot of supporters. I received a lot of backlash for exposing the so-called conservative leader, Pierre Paul, when he went on television and announced his unmoving stand on the murder of the innocent children. I want to ask you a direct question. What do you think? How is your belief if it comes to abortion?
I ultimately believe, well, first of all, from a legal perspective, Canada has no abortion law. We can abort babies at birth. It's happened in Quebec already.
Yeah.
They made such a significant thing about it. They gave the baby a name that was being born and aborted while it was being birthed. I think it's a tragedy. I think it's an offense, actually. I'm very sympathetic to mothers that are put in the position where they feel that they're isolated and they don't have the resources or whatever to raise a child. But I think it's not the way forward for sophisticated nations.
You've got a hi from Tommy Zito.
Oh, Tommy Zito, good to be with you earlier this week, and thanks for sending that note in. So I think it's an offense, and I think that it's not about. I guess it is about saying no to abortion, but I think that we should be celebrating life and making it so that the mothers out there are induced to actually want to have their children. And this is where I think what Viktor Orban is doing in Hungary is so effective, because he's simply saying to young mothers, well, we're going to come around you. We want to have you birth that child. We want to have that happen. If you bring one child into the earth before you're 30, you're going to have income tax free till you're 30. If you bring two in, you're getting no income tax until you're 40. And if you bring three in, it's till you're 50, and it's for life. Yeah. Something like that.
That's incredible, because it brings incentives to have families. My question to the Canadians and comment on this is this: why would you murder your own children and replace them with your worst enemies? That's what I don't get it. I don't understand why Canadians don't want children that would be a blessing to this country, and they replace them with invaders, with people that actually hate you. They hate the way you live, your traditions, your values. They want to change them. I say I'm an immigrant, as you can tell. And I said quite often, including on radio and television, to the people that they refuse to integrate, people that refuse to be Canadians, well, go back where you came from. If you don't want to speak English, if you like China so much, you're creating China, towns and places, or Russian places, or Ukrainian places within this country. Well, if you love Ukraine so much, go back where you came from. If you like Poland so much, go back where you came from. If you like China, communist socialism so much, go to North Korea. Go back where you came from. if you don't value, or the question I would have to those people would be very simple. Why then did you come? Like, what are you doing here? For whatever reason you don't like what Canada is giving you, well, go back where you came from, because I came to this country for a purpose, for a reason. I came for freedom. I did not move to Canada for money. I had money. We were doing very well in Europe. We came here for freedom because we were sick and tired of corruption. We wanted to live in a country that aligns with our standards, with our moral standards, with our faith. And I'll never forget the meeting I had with in a consulate with an officer that was interviewing us, and I'll never forget what he said to us. He said, "Come to Canada. Canada is the freest country on earth. In Canada, no one will ever persecute you for your faith." And here we are, 30 years later.
Yep.
Pastors being arrested, pastors being imprisoned, freedom fighters facing unbelievable amounts of years just for voicing their dissatisfaction with the government overreach, corrupted courts, corrupted law enforcement agencies, corrupted politicians that refuse to stand for us. And it drives me nuts when I hear people calling Pierre Paul the savior of Alberta. It's just unbelievable how far we have fallen from the original concept of what's right, what's good, and what's evil.
Well, Artur, this is one of the reasons I wrote a book called The Battle for the Soul of Canada. I outline the significant evidence trail of really the trickery that's going on to deceive Canadians, and particularly conservative Canadians, and particularly Christian conservative Canadians, because the entire population that should be radically opposing these things for all kinds of reasons aren't doing it because of whatever, because of receipt granting status in the churches, because of pastoral leadership that's cowardly. And so that if you want to talk about it from that perspective, those are some of the challenges. But I think the thing that Canadians need to see is that we all have a very hard time believing, because we were raised in a country. Anybody who is over 50 in this nation was raised in a country where there was an inherent belief that the government was essentially good.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm thinking in somewhere in the late 90s, we kind of came to the perspective that maybe our government isn't as good as it was, but it's at least benign. It's kind of neutral. And we kind of had to come to this place where we had to deal with this notion of a secular government and some of the values that would have been. I mean, I grew up, when I was in school, we used to say the Lord's Prayer, sing God Save the Queen, and then sing O Canada every morning. And that's certainly not the way that it is now, right? So
they even removed the Ten Commandments from the courts.
They did.
Right?
So the challenge that Canadians have is believing that things have gotten as bad as it is, and they're not doing the work, the necessary cognitive work to look at all of the failures where the party that has been their security blanket their whole lifetimes is actually betraying them consistently across policy decisions. And that is where I came to, because I had to look and see, not only are these just little slips, these are a consistent series of failures that is now actually leading us to the betrayal of what our nation is.
Yeah.
And so unless you see that our nation is being betrayed and we are moving to something other than what we grew up in, the nation that we grew up in is being swapped out for a communist, socialist, technocratic, fashionist hybrid that's ruled by somewhere else. And of course, the agenda in the geopolitical world out there would love to have Canada. I mean, we're abundantly wealthy. We have almost no people in this country. I mean, 40 million people. Some of the cities seem crowded now. But you can drive I'm running in Battle River, Crowfoot, and I can drive for like hundreds of kilometers, and there's hardly any houses. So we have lots of space in this country, and we could do great. But what we have right now is tyranny, and we have most of the population that is mildly disrupted, perhaps not enough yet, and we can talk about that, looking and saying, well, maybe Pierre Polyv is our savior. And actually, Pierre Polyv has consistently failed to engage many, if not all of the issues that a real conservative leader should be doing. And let me just, before I forget this point, one of the biggest indictments that I think Mr. Polyv has been a party to is that when President Trump said to Canada before this federal election, he basically said, you need to clean up your border. Mm-hmm. You've got a terrible fence and you have a dirty backyard. And what I mean by that metaphor is to say that President Trump said to Canadians, look, you need to deal with fentanyl and you need to deal with human trafficking, okay? And when I'm talking about
which is a big part.
It's a big part, and you know what? A lot of Canadians like to think that our country's so puritanical that we really don't have this. And a lot of people, when I talk to a lot of Canadians, I can see them kind of do an eye roll, and they think that fentanyl production in Canada is 10 kilograms going across the Manitoba border at night. That's what the trafficking of drugs is. It's not. It's an industrial scale trafficking that's going.
And the government is in it.
I haven't seen that evidence, but it's industrial scale.
Yeah, I had meetings with people that have the evidence, provided the evidence, what is happening in shipyards in British Columbia, Vancouver,
Montreal.
99% of the ships that are coming to Vancouver are not screened, not checked.
Yeah, I know
because they're being controlled by the Chinese operatives. So China is in bed with the Canadian government doing this. And the RCMP, actually kudos to them, because they said there is absolutely nothing they can do about it because they're being blocked by the federal government. So this is the reality we have right now in our country. We have been betrayed at every level. And there is no real opposition to this tyranny.
There's a full system breakdown. But so... the Americans are looking at Canada, and this is where we're now into geopolitics, because the Americans are looking at Canada and saying, what you're hosting on the northern border, we're concerned about, because that could actually destabilize our northern border. We're worried about continental security. And so it was no surprise to me that Mark Carney said we're going to have retaliatory tariffs. It was an incredible surprise to me when I heard Mr. Polyv come out and say that we too are going to endorse retaliatory tariffs. And I think Canadians, listen really closely here, if I may say this to you. When Pierre Polyv chose retaliatory tariffs, he was choosing to protect organized crime in Canada. He wasn't protecting the Canadian people and their livelihoods. He was protecting organized crime. You say to me, oh, well, what, is there really organized crime? Well, let's remember here that in November, and check this out if you want, I'm just not making this stuff up, the Toronto Dominion Bank in the U.S. was fined $4 billion for money laundering. Well, money laundering, the only people that need to money launder is organized crime. Yeah. And so when you start to actually climb in and look at these things, you're seeing...
And the politicians in Canada right now.
You're starting, not me, but anyways, you start to see that this is a big scale operation. And you know what a conservative prime minister would do, what I would say we need to tackle organized crime. Of course. We need to recognize that it's there. We need to define it as a terrorist organization. We need to accelerate the mandate and authority of our enforcement officers so that they have the leave and authority to do what they need to do, up to and including lethal force orders, to eradicate our nation of organized crime. That's what a conservative prime minister would say.
Yeah, I was observing this, of course, with my American friends, and the way a real conservative leader would supposed to react, it would be like something like this. Yes, sir, we got a problem. We will tackle it. We'll make sure the border is secured.
Correct.
And we will go full force against the fentanyl production or, moving that deadly stuff across the border. We will do what we are supposed to be doing, which is securing the borders. I just want to, on a side note, and we're going to talk about independence because that's, of course, is a very big topic. Someone just commented that in the riding you're running, unfortunately, people would vote for a donkey if the donkey had a conservative banner. So the people are not thinking. They don't understand the concept that there is no such a thing as a conservative party within the conservative party right now, that all those people walked away from conservative values. But I want to directly talk to the Christians. If you're living in the area, if you call yourself a Christian, you go to a church, let me ask you this direct question. Do you think that God is okay with you? Well, you claim you're a Christian. You claim you're honoring God. You claim that you believe in God, a God of righteousness and holiness and life. Do you think God is okay with you voting for a party that murders and wants to continue to murder children? I mean, it's a very simple question. All of the politics aside, all of the other things, the corruption, the betrayal, the treachery, the lying, the cheating, all of that aside, just on one issue, you think that God will be okay with you going to the ballot and saying yes to Pierre Paul and Conservative Party that slaughters and want to continue to slaughter children? You think God that created those babies is fine with that? And I'll go further. If you go and you vote for the Conservative Party that murders children, you are as wicked as they are. You cannot look in the mirror and say, I'm a good man, if you assist politicians in murdering children. Don't tell me you're a Christian. You're not. You're as wicked as the liberals and NDPers if you will choose to support a government, support a political party that destroys God's creation. Full stop. We don't have to go any further. If you go to the ballot and you say yes to Pierre Polyv, yes to Conservative Party, you're saying yes to the slaughter of the babies. And in my Bible, maybe we have different Bibles. Maybe you read a different one, a Chinese version. But in a real Bible, the one that God has given us, it states very clearly, thou shalt not murder. And if you're supporting the murderers, you are as wicked as they are. And for me, yes, there is lots of corruption, lots of things, lots of games. I mean, to me, the Conservative Party is a political theater. That's how I see it. The way they dress, the way they talk. You will never see those actors talking to other people freely from their hearts. Everything is staged. Everything is prepared. You won't see them sitting like here without any notes and just talking to the people. Here is my heart. I'm going to give it to you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right. Take it or leave it. Because they're actors. They're Hollywood production, and everything has to be scripted by their handlers. Mm-hmm. That's the game we're witnessing right now. But on this one issue only, as a pastor from the perspective of the Bible, if you support a person like Pierre Paul that went on television and stated that his party will never touch this issue, keep slaughtering children, it's all good, it's fine by me, it's fine by my party, we'll continue. 5,000 children in Calgary alone every year, 5,000 children in Edmonton every year, and over 100,000 children slaughtered in this Holocaust in abortion every single year. That's good for me. I'm conservative. No issues here, no problems, nothing to see here. If you support that man, if you support that party, you're evil. You're evil, and hell awaits people like you. So that's...
Yeah, and Artur, I mean, Western Canadians, you have to remember that the Conservative Party was formed with the Reform Party, who had a very strong social conservative perspective. And the whole Stephen Harper's whole genius in terms of becoming Prime Minister was fusing the kind of fiscal and social conservatives together to bring this agenda forward. And
traditional marriage, I remember 2005 when he was, his government was under attack. I don't know if you remember that. I don't remember if you were here or not. But I was asked to rally the churches and the Christians. We had 5,000 people showing up. because they formed a coalition against the Conservative government. And his job was in jeopardy. And we did rally the people, and he promised to us during that time that he is going to change, and the traditional marriage is going to come back to Canada. Of course, then flip-flopping happened, never did it. And then he yelled and screamed at his members of parliament, I'm talking about Stephen Harper, that don't you dare talk about abortion. The abortion issue is dead. I never want to hear it again. And that's the pattern that we're seeing for the past 20 years, that there's absolutely no willingness. That's my point from the Conservative Party.
Polyv is Stephen Harper 2.0. It's that is a learned behavior. And Polyv is in Alberta now, talking about helping to unleash Alberta energy. But how is Alberta going to unleash its energy if Mr. Polyv won't agree to revoke the UN Paris Climate Accord? And these are all the games that are being played. There's sound bites being put out there that says, yes, let's release our energy. Oh yeah, everyone in Alberta thinks that's so amazing. Of course we do need to do that. But at the same time, he is restricted by whatever force or persons that are out there from actually saying that he will revoke the UN Paris Climate Accord, which completely restricts carbon. So this is why the people in Battle River, Crowfoot, really need to look at these issues, because it really is a donkey in a jersey. And if you're prepared to look at that and just accept that, then that's okay. But that is our problem in Canada, because all of these issues that we're talking about, equalization, Alberta sovereignty, we'll use that more expansive word of sovereignty rather than independence. A freer Alberta, a wealthier Alberta, the things that Albertans want, the people that in Battle River Crowfoot want, they're looking at Polyv, and he's against all these things, including abortion. And he was a part of criminalizing parents if they stop their children going trans.
And there is a lot more. I did an expose on Stephen Harper and Pierre Paul, and because of it, I was greatly hammered by the people in Alberta, as was called a traitor. I was called a liberal operative. I was called all kinds of names. But I wanna.
Before you move on from there, Pierre Paul made a comment in 2006, and I put this in my book. He referred to the people that came from the Reform Party that formed the Conservative Party as those people, those embarrassing people, standard within the Conservative Party of Canada right now for the donkey that is running. And we need to get real about this issue in this conversation and start to interrogate the issues. Now, why is it that in this riding we've got the long ballot list? I actually wonder if the long ballot list isn't actually designed to bring confusion so that there's no other name recognition other than Pierre Polyv. It's a question. It's not a statement.
It could be. But people say, and I've faced this many, many times for many years, that it's splitting of the votes. You're talking about long ballots, lots of names. They are saying that you don't stand a chance. It's splitting the votes, and you're not going to make it. So why bother? What do you say to that? Because to me, that's the definition of insanity, craziness. Keep doing the same thing. In other words, what I'm saying is that what we have been doing in the past few decades, we are not raising the bar for those people, for the politicians, for the representatives. We have lowered the bar, and truly a donkey would do a better job than your average politician right now, because donkey is not looking to hurt the people. You feed the donkey, you take care of the donkey, and it leaves you alone. The politicians, you keep feeding them, and they're like pigs at the trough, never satisfied, constantly eating, raising taxes, destroying our families, robbing us. I mean, truly, you will own nothing and you will be happy is in front of our very eyes. So the people saying to you, splitting the votes, you don't stand a chance, back off, we only have two reliable choices. The liberals, and so the Nazis, and then we've got the Judas Iscariots. That's it. There is no other option. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's any tension with splitting the vote in this riding, because I think the last election, The Conservative candidate won 83%. So there's no discussion. The splitting the vote conversation means don't deteriorate Conservative votes because a Liberal MP is worse than a Conservative MP, and that's not a reality in this riding at all. This ethos of ensuring that change doesn't happen, or that the real conversations that the Canadians need to have is changing, because incrementally there's more and more people that are starting, the lights are switching on, and they're starting to see, hey, the Conservative Party has left our values.
Yeah.
The Conservative Party is implementing policies that we actually don't agree with, especially with regard to Alberta sovereignty right now, Alberta energy, social values. And they're saying,
freedom.
hey, we need to start to think about these issues. And on top of that, there is a very strong sentiment that there's a lot of games being played now in Battle River Crowfoot, because the MP that they love, Mr. Damien Curick, who is kind of their local boy, and they voted for 83%, has now strangely resigned his seat to facilitate what Canadians see as a central Canadian. Pierre Paul likes to talk about being from southern Alberta, but he's been a part of that machine and only a politician all his life, and he is seen as a flip-flopper, and he's seen as being parachuted into the riding. The people don't like that this is the case, and many people are challenged by the fact that he's coming and asking the question: is there another agenda to actually make sure that Alberta is quiet and falls back comfortably into its federalist agenda?
Yeah, it's a Harper 2.0, just like you said.
Sure,
the same
it is.
thing.
But
people believe that Harper is going to save us when he was the prime minister because he's from here. But the truth is, he aligned very quickly with the values of the East, and he abandoned Alberta.
But people in Alberta are starting to see that this just isn't about Alberta not becoming free. People are starting to see that Canada is being betrayed, and Alberta is the anchor point in this nation to actually see Canada saved. And I think that this is the difference that's going on, because Polyv is not so much, they might talk about him as the savior of Canada, but people are starting to see that Alberta is actually the beachhead of freedom for Canada. Because when you look at what's going on, the nation's being betrayed. That's what post-nationalism is about. Yeah. And so Alberta's that only place that can actually have the will and tenacity and spirit to stand up and fight. So people ask me about this. Well, what's your view? I mean, you alluded already to this conversation about Alberta independence and sovereignty, etc. What's your view on this? And some people ask me, well, how can you be run as a federal MP and then be for Alberta independence? And I said, well, I think that Alberta needs to be independent because it is the place, it's the beachhead for freedom that can see the rest of Canada liberated from its tyranny. But it's just like looking at Nazi Europe when the tyranny of Nazism had come across the whole continent. The Allies needed to come and look. They didn't necessarily start with a 60-point plan. They came and say, we need to defeat the darkness of Nazism. And what did they ultimately do? They dealt with the battles that were outside of continental Europe. They dealt with North Africa. And then they set up a beachhead for freedom that led to the liberation of Europe. And there's many people, if you go to Holland today, they will kiss you if they find you're Canadian. Normandy, northern France, because Canadians went and they pushed back, and my family did too. Fought, bled, died for that freedom. And yet the same enemy is actually encroaching ideologically now on our shores, and we're sleeping, we're in a malaise, and we're electing donkeys, or think that we're going to elect donkeys. And so we have to start with a beachhead. Alberta needs to become that beachhead for freedom. I think Canada 1.0 is broken, and I think by actually moving towards Alberta independence, that means that we're setting up a new nation, starting with Alberta. It means that we're moving towards a constitutional republic where the inalienable rights that are given by God are entrenched in a constitution that recognizes the supremacy of God, and it can't be tampered with by politicians or activist Supreme Courts. And then when you start to see those principles of life and the values that actually built the country, and that William Aberhart and Manning brought to life into the foundation, now have been inserted into the Christian foundation stones of this province.
For over 40 years.
For over 40 years, we're going to see blessing, prosperity, wealth, and fruitfulness in this nation where Albertans prosper. And let me just say this, to finish that. It's not just about, I don't believe Albertans want to become Americans. I believe they want to become independent, but I don't think that they're selfish. We're incredibly benevolent in this province, and I think what they want to do is establish a place where true freedom can exist, and people can be healthy and prosper, and families can be fruitful and grow, and we can pass our wealth to our grandchildren. That's what the people of Alberta want to see. They want to see our culture, values, and traditions perpetuated. And what's going to happen is the rest of this dysfunctional country is going to break down because we're not going to be paying for the dysfunction to continue to exist.
Billions.
And they're going to be looking over the fence and seeing that the grass is greener, and they're going to have to be told, you know what, we'd love to have you back into this country. This is a sovereign Alberta, but if you're coming in, it's going to be under this constitutional republic and under these rules, and we're going to leave the parasites and the fleas out. The ideological parasites and fleas. And that's what I'm talking about to the people of Battle River and Crowfoot. And people are brokenhearted because they're seeing the nation that they love and their children's future lost.
Yeah. Well, here's what I see in Alberta. We have been betrayed by all levels of government, and we simply cannot keep voting for the same insanity, thinking, okay, this time, because they promised us it's going to be different. No, it's going to be the same. So why would we replace one tyrant with another tyrant? That's my approach. And I want to add something to this. When people say splitting the votes, you don't stand a chance. Well, you truly do not stand a chance if good people refuse to vote for good candidates, for good values. If you align yourself with the conservative government that advocates for the murder of the children, keep voting for them. I mean, that's your choice. You can keep doing it, just don't call yourself a Christian. But if you don't want to align yourself with the murder of the innocent children, well, then you need to look for alternatives. You need to look for someone else who is not standing for this evil. That's the man I'm going to vote for. So my approach to this is, and I have been saying this to the people for a number of years, we don't stand a chance if you, good people, refuse to vote for good candidates. So, in other words, the revolving door is going to continue and not much is going to change. I would say to you that we will continue on this slope straight to our demise. Canada has fallen. It's not falling. Canada has fallen. Now the question is, are we willing to stand up and fight for what's rightfully ours? Quite often I would say to the people that they have to ask themselves a very simple question, Grant. Whose country is this? If it's Trudeau's country or Polyev's or all those con artists' country, then I rest my case. Give it to them and be a good slave. But if you're like me, if you have this belief that this is our country, that means it belongs to you and me and our children and their children, then we got to rise up, stand up, and fight for what's rightfully ours. And we cannot do this alone. We need the support of the good people that have the same values and beliefs like we have, and of course with the blessing of God, because without God, we're finished, we're done. And I told you that at the very beginning. I think the problem we're facing is the Canadians are not suffering enough yet. I think it's still too good, so they don't see the danger. But people like me, we grew up in hell, so we see that this can happen very quickly. I mean, do you know that Alberta or Albertans are in a worse financial shape from within the Confederation? You know the latest statistics?
No.
So Albertans are number one if it comes to defaulting on credit cards from within the Confederation. Okay. Because Albertans are used to good life, energy sector, money flowing. So their idea is, okay, I will use credit card, I will use the second mortgage, I will use, other means to pay for it, and the economy will come back and will be good again. But it's not coming back. It's getting worse and worse and worse. So all the promises of the Conservative Party are not coming to fruition. We have been betrayed, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse, even though we actually sleep on energy, on oil, natural resources.
Right. So just going back to your point, I think you're right. Canada actually has fallen. It just hasn't toppled over yet. It's operating as a failed state. We're seeing the politicization of our courts, or a Supreme Court activism, the politicization of our police. We're seeing the deterioration of the Canadian dollar by upwards to 50%. And how long can we keep printing money? And I think when I look at where we're at in this country and what I'm here to do, I'm really not here as a politician. I'm here as a patriot, because my job is to show up and speak the truth to Canadians and let them decide if they want to make a change. And if they choose to stay, nurtured into their little Canadian comfort blanket that has smallpox on it, that's actually destroying our nation or a people. I'm going to use a pretty shocking image there to make you think. It will get worse. And, how long will this going to go? And I think the only thing that's preserving right now the fact that this nation hasn't toppled is because Trump is in the U.S. looking at Canada saying, look, you're not going to, basically he's saying, you're not going to become you're not going to become a post-nation state. You'll become Americans before we allow Canada to fall to globalists.
It's a national threat to the American people, right? And, I find this fascinating, Grant, and you can talk about this, that Canadians, so many Canadians, they have this deep hatred towards America and American people, which I don't, as a Polish immigrant, I don't understand, because it looks like to me they do not understand that it's only because of American armed forces, American military, Canada exists as a nation. If it was not for the American protection, we would be taken over by China.
Canadians do not have a deep hatred of Americans. Most of us are related to Americans. My grandmother was American and came to Canada. Was originally from Ireland, came to Canada, then the U.S., then Canada, and homesteaded in Saskatchewan. And we have all kinds of shared cultural affinity. We don't hate Americans, but what's happening in this last 20 years is the representation that we hate Americans.
Yeah, the
15 years, the politicians and the media, and we don't. There's a credible affinity in the Canada that I grew up in. We used to play football and rugby north to south on this continent more than east to west. We played with American high schools. So we don't hate Americans. In fact, they're our brothers. It's just that it's being represented. And now with Trump, because Trump is opposing this globalist post-national regime, we're wanting to portray the American president as orange man bad, and therefore the Americans are bad. Well, you know what? I'll tell you, the only thing that's really stabilizing Canada right now is the fact that America's sitting there, not moving to engage a post-national threat that is being hosted in Canada. And I'll tell you, in relation to my conversations with any American intelligence infrastructure that I've come across, they look at Canada and they say Canada is becoming a destabilizing threat to our northern border.
Right. That's right.
And they're saying, and whatever you believe, for all the people that are sitting here listening to this conversation, I have a pretty clear perspective in my mind that there are foreign troops in our country. Many people believe that. Many people have seen them. I can kind of get my mind around 200,000 Chinese troops being in this country.
We have them in Alberta, flying jets in Alberta. We have them in the north, far north, being trained military from China, and we have them in British Columbia being trained over there as well.
And I'll tell you, whatever we believe is the case in terms of the number value of Chinese troops, the Americans believe there's 500,000. So it really doesn't matter what you and I believe, or someone else that's watching the show. That's what the Americans think. And in addition to that, they're looking and saying, what have you begun to host in Canada in terms of sleeper Islamic cells that could be destabilizing threats to Canada?
Which has been proven because there's thousands of them that crossed the border and were caught by the Americans already.
So America actually sees us as a vulnerability to continental security, and I think that they're watching very closely to see when is actually Canada going to topple, and are we going to need to consolidate this continent, because they are not prepared to allow to have China 2 miles across the border. And I'll tell you what, I mean, you really want to play out the geopolitics on this, and I don't know what your people normally are listening to when they have your conversations, but if you actually scenario play out or game theory out that kind of a confrontation, Canada is actually in a position of becoming akin to the Ukraine in terms of a proxy conflict that's going on in the world between a globalist agenda that's being fought out in the Ukraine. Wow, I mean, it's time to start getting real about some of these conversations.
And the problem, Grant, what I see is we do not have strong leadership. I'm talking about all the parties. There's no real strong leadership to oppose the globalist agenda, because those people are part of the globalistic agenda. Donald Trump is unique because he is his own creature, if you will. He is Donald Trump. He loves America deep. Mm-hmm. There is this deep appreciation, love for America, because America gave him the opportunity to accumulate that huge wealth that he has. His family, which I met a number of times, they're very highly patriotic. Mm-hmm. They love America. They love the American flag, and they want America to be strong. Mm-hmm. And you're right, Canada has become a threat to the national security of the USA, and it seems it's not stopping because we do not have strong leadership. If that was a strong opposition party, not part of the uni party, because they're all the same, in my opinion, then certain things would not happen, because they would be the watchdog. They would be watching what is happening. But in the past number of years, what do you have? You have the same people doing exactly the same thing. For example, we are witnessing the dress-up game. And I told you those are political actors. It's a Hollywood production. So those people are playing the game of dress-up for Ukraine, dress-up for the Muslims, dress-up for this, dress-up for that, dress-up for Hindus. And you've got all the politicians, our premier, playing a dress-up. They had the whole 9 yards, going to different temples and mosques. You got Pierre Paul playing the same thing, colors for Ukraine, colors for the Muslims, colors for the Hindus. You've got the Prime Minister doing the same thing. Those people, in my opinion, they're following the same script, because the same thing you see in England, the same thing you see in Germany, the same thing you see in Ireland, the same thing France is doing. So you've got some sinister cabal that has sent a book. You talked about your book. I think they have their own little book. And it's like chapter by chapter, they are told to implement certain things as a whole. Yep. And I think that's what we're observing. And if we will not smarten up, I think we're going to see what France is seeing. Paris is burning, or England, it's burning, or Ireland, it's burning, Germany, it's burning.
Well, and this is part of the problem with living in a bubble, going to Costco, going to Mexico, investing in your RSPs, and just creating a false hope that all these problems are going to go away, because they're going to amplify. And ultimately what we're really dealing with in Canada is a failure to tackle more than symptoms. We listen to symptom conversations. So when we have Muslims in Canada, or I'm just trying to think of the name. Forgive me. If we have Muslims in Canada out burning, it's not Muslims, it's actually Palestinians. Excuse me. If we have Palestinians out burning our Canadian flag and chanting "Death to Canada," the most you'll hear from a Canadian politician is that I oppose anti-Semitism. Yeah, as if anti-Semitism had some, benign source that just, said things that, was offensive to Jews. Well, what we've got is a group of people that have immigrated to this country that hate the country. They're burning our flag. They're calling for the death of Canada. And our politicians won't actually have the root, real conversation. And the root, real conversation is, when are we going to have a conversation about the compatibility of militant Islam with our Canadian culture, values, and traditions?
Yeah, that's
and the
right.
reason we can't do that is because we have our value system that has been unplugged from the supremacy of God and the rule of law. That means we can't say no to anything anymore. That's why we're saying yes to everything. And that's why we're seeing all these polarizing forces being ripping the country apart. And why is it okay for the country to be ripped apart? Because the great fabric of the Canada that we love and that our forefathers immigrated to, and that you immigrated to, and that people are still immigrating to, is they want the stability of the value system that built the nation and created the wealth and created order and stable government.
What made Canada great?
Well, that's what made it great. But what's happening is our own government is enabling the deconstruction of our nation because they don't want global forces for good that uphold righteous principles. And when I say righteous, I mean principles that are upright. And when I use the word righteousness, I'm talking about making the crooked straight. Canadians don't want corruption. They don't want organized crime in the country. And yet, that's what's being tolerated. And tolerate means not confront.
Yeah. I want to take you a little bit back in time. And I use this a number of times during my speeches. And as you know, I am still the leader of the Solidarity Movement of Alberta. We were successful in removing the Minister of Justice, Tyler Shandro, the corrupted man that arrested more pastors than the Chinese government. We took down Jason Copping, Minister of Health, that lied and cheated. So we were successful in that aspect. But I want to ask you this, and I want the people to really, really pay attention to this, that the past 5 years, it was a great test of who is who in the zoo, if you will. Mm-hmm. And quite often when I have an opportunity to meet with a group of people, I would say this to them: if they did not march with you, if they did not bleed with you, if they didn't stand for you when you needed them the most, why would you vote for those people? Yeah. Why would you elect them again? In history, and I love history, when you betrayed your king, the other king you're betraying your king to would greatly reward you, but only for a season. Mm-hmm. Very quickly you would be eliminated as well. Mm-hmm. Why? Because if you were willing to betray one king, what is going to stop you from betraying the other one? So my question to the people is, why would you vote and keep voting for the same parties that slaughtered your loved ones, prevented you to see your elderly, your grandmas, your mothers, your fathers, jobbed your children and are still jobbing your children? In the province of Alberta, they are jobbing our children 6 months old. You know that?
Yeah.
And the recommendation is every 3 months. Children are dying right now because of what the conservative government is doing to our children. So my point is very simple. If they did this to you before, you really think they're not going to continue doing the same thing to you over and over again? And what is going to take for the people to finally say, enough of the Judas Iscariots, I'll never vote for the Conservative Party, NDP, or the Liberal Party in my life. I'm going to look for a betterment. I'm going to look for someone else that bled with us, marched with us, fought with us against the tyranny, and risked everything for the freedom, for liberties, for lives. I remember during the time I was asking questions, where are our representatives? Where is the opposition party? Where is Pierre Paul? Mm-hmm. Where are those heroes in Parliament that I watched for a number of years opposing the Liberal Party? Well, they were nowhere to be found. You know, in the comments from time to time, I will hear people say, well, he brought donuts and coffee to the truckers. Mm-hmm. Seriously? If that's your definition of a hero, my God, there is no hope. He did it politics. He played the safe game of politics. But when we needed them the most, they betrayed us. Do you know, Grant, that to this day we have political prisoners, political dissidents in prison, right here in Alberta, that pastors are still being imprisoned to this day, 2025.
I do.
That they still fight for their lives. I'm still in courts. I'm still fighting. I was just hammered by a judge, $17,000. Today I had a conversation with the lawyer. I have to come with $17,000 to give to those traitors and betrayal, Judas Iscariot. So if they did not march with you, why would you support an organization that failed the test?
Well, this is the conundrum that Canada finds itself, and I think that's probably part of the reason why it's social taboo to bring up conversations like the vaccine, or why it was illegal in Alberta in so many places to fly the Canadian flag on your car after the convoy, and yet we have.
I saw with my own eyes police tackling protesters in Calgary, Alberta. For having a Canadian flag,
so
playing hockey.
If you listen to Pierre Paul's recent, and I tweeted on this, if you listen to Pierre Paul's recent CBC interview, he's celebrating how loyal Central Albertans are because they have the Canadian flag up, and yet where was he when we were being ticketed for having a Canadian flag on our vehicles post-COVID, or post the return of the convoy to Alberta? I mean, that's when Coots unfolded, as you well know. So. There's a desire for conservative Western Canadian conservatives to have short memories, because when you talk to them privately, they're not at all happy with the things that they're seeing happen, especially within the Christian community. But the challenge is that there's a psychology that says, well, we're going to vote. They'll concede that they're not happy, but then they'll say, well, it's the lesser of two evils.
That's the problem. That's what frustrates me so much. As a Christian, we should never vote for the lesser of two evils. We should not vote for evil.
But but I agree with you. But that argument obviously hasn't had any traction. And I think the thing that's starting to sober Canadians up, and I think I'm seeing this in the freedom movement again in Alberta, is that they're beginning to recognize that the spool of string for this Canada that we knew is now running out. And unless we actually start to do something differently, it's not about whether we're happy with how much money we send to Ontario and Quebec. And then we could quibble about whether we want to pay less or more or whatever. But the point is that what's coming with post-nationalism is that we will lose the means to pay.
We are already losing the means to pay.
And so,
look at the price at the gas station.
Yeah.
We're being taxed to death. Albertans are paying 50%
But I think
taxes.
there's a collective awareness that window is running out where we can actually engage this in the failed system that hasn't toppled. And unless we, and that's why I actually believe that Battle River this Battle River Crowfoot by-election is such an important riding, because it will not make one difference to the structure of our Houses of Parliament if Pierre Paul gets another seat. And people say, well, what can you do? Well, I say again, what has 144 or whatever Conservative MPs done in the last 10 years to actually confront any issues? So what would you rather have, 144 whipped and muted Conservative MPs, or one person that's actually going to fight for the people and tell the truth?
That's a great point.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, one of the big issues in this country, I've already said, is that Alberta is the beachhead for freedom, true freedom for all Canadians. It is, because it's the only place that can defend the Canada that Canadians love and are mourning the loss of, because there's a molecular DNA shift that is being undertaken by the Liberals to transform this nation from its original design. And I'll tell you what, if I'm given a platform to be able to speak in our Houses of Parliament, I'm going to be talking about Alberta independence because Alberta Independence is the beachhead for freedom for all Canadians. And I'll tell you what, we have legislation that was given to us by the British, the 1931 Westminster Act. And a lot of people now have already, in the last 6 months, been trained to think that that's an irrelevant piece of legislation. That was a piece of legislation that was passed by the British, who basically severed the sovereignty of the British Crown over the Dominion of Canada and passed it to the people in the provinces, okay? And the idea was that those provinces that would then meet together, set up a constitutional structure within the province to decide how they wanted to be ruled and regulated within the province. And I've heard in Alberta in the last month, people, lawyers, say that the 1931 Westminster Act is quackery, quote, that it's quackery. And my challenge for any of those people that think that the Westminster Act is irrelevant to this discussion about true freedom in this country, I would say to you that the people of the Republic of Ireland were given the same sovereign freedom by the same 6 pages of paper in 1931, and I would invite you to write or go to Ireland and ask them whether they have had a constitutional republic and the freedom that flows from it since 1931. And if you suggest to them that that's quackery, they'll laugh at you. And so we're being told now by the forces that don't want to look at this important piece of legislation that it's quackery. But the truth is that it's the strongest legal legitimacy and position that we have. And a lot of people are putting a hope right now in relation to this referendum that's upcoming. We haven't even started dealing with litigation that relates to what the question should be. We haven't had interpretation.
No, this is
a
stalling.
gaslighting.
This is a stalling.
It's a slow walk.
I said that at the very beginning. I was actually asked by the movement to come and join, and I was asked not to bring God into the movement, and I said I'm not interested. Without my God, there is no freedom. There is not even a possibility of freedom. You're going to exchange one tyrant for another tyrant. Only God of freedom. And the Bible says where the Spirit of the Lord, there is liberty. Only God of freedom can bring freedom to a nation. If you don't allow him to come in, if you don't want him, you're going to replace one face with another face of a tyrant. Different name, different face, the same craziness. But I want to give a chance to the people. If you have any comment for Grant, we're almost done today. If you have any comment for Grant, please write it down, and we will I'll gladly ask that question. So please write a question, and we will we'll continue with that. I want to just say this to you. You, in reality, you want to become people's eyes and people's ears in Parliament. Because we know that one man cannot change the beast, but you can inform the people about the things that are happening. And I think that's very important. I think it's important to have someone inside the rooms, someone that will be able to come in front of the people and say, here is what I've heard, here is what I have seen, here is what they're doing, and because I represent you, you deserve to know.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's absolutely right, and I think that the message here, particularly as it relates to Alberta independence and the strength that Alberta can bring for all of Canada if it's done right, those messages aren't just going to happen in Ottawa. Those messages are going to be communicated in places that are interested in the instability of Canada, like Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you, the Americans are tremendously interested in seeing strong constitutional republics created, but they need to see the people take the leadership to do that. And I think that that is part of the discussion. That is the epicenter of this discussion in Battle River, Crowfoot. And so we're talking about the two Canadas. The one Canada that we want to see happen that is true north, strong and free, that we say, God keep our land glorious and free, and the Canada that Mr. Polyv is ushering in by his complicitness or his omission to challenge the forces that are actually rewiring the original design of our nation. And so this is where the rubber hits the road. And I'll tell you what, Alberta is a boiling pot right now underneath this surface. Everyone's in the haze of summer, but it's a boiling pot. And this conversation is not just going to go away because there's a surprise in an election. It will manifest in other ways. And
this is not going away.
It's not going away.
No.
And I'm hopeful that people have the wisdom to see that we can take a better way, a higher way, and move towards advocacy, influence, and truth, both internationally, geopolitically, and within Canada, to deal with the corrosive undermining and deconstruction of our nation. And that is what I'm about. And when, if you would have asked the Allies in 1940 what they were going to do with Hitler, what's your 50-point plan? And sometimes people ask me that. What's your 50-point plan? And the Allies would have said, well, we're going to figure that out. And when we know, we're not going to tell you. And when we do it, it may not be 1, 2, 3, 4. It might be 1, 3, 7, 10, 2. Yeah. Because that's how you win a war. But we're going to defeat the tyranny that is threatening our culture, values, traditions, children, wealth, prosperity, the blessing of this land, and our future. That's what we're going to do. And that's what I'm about. That's why I'm here. And that's why I say I'm actually a patriot and not a politician. And Canadians need to realize that there's a revolution to change this country being played out by the people in government in Ottawa. Some are doing it and some are allowing it to happen and gaslighting you into believing that they're trying to stop it. That's the bottom line. That's what this election is about in Battle River Crowfoot. And Canadians need to wake up. And my job is to show up, say what I need to say, and then let Canadians decide what way this is all going to unpack.
Well, I have one final question for you. Do you think you will be allowed to do a debate with Pierre Paul?
Well, it's an interesting thing because, I've just come from the riding to this morning to do this interview down here in Calgary, and I'm delighted to be here. But, if you want to go and hear Mr. Polyv speak in Battle River Crowfoot, it's by invitation only. First of all, you have to pre-sign up so they know who's coming.
That's crazy.
And secondly, if you want to ask,
there goes your democracy.
If you want to ask a question, then your question is pre-screened. And if they don't like your question, it will not be asked. I'll tell you this, people of Battle River Crowfoot, if you're listening, if you come to one of my events, I will do my presentation. There is no invitation only. It's open to the public. And I have an open forum discussion at the end of every meeting, and I have exhaustive questions, and I will deal with and have those conversations with people, even if they disagree. It's a true town hall, and that's what we need to return to so the grassroots and everyday Canadians can actually ask the questions. And I'll tell you why I do it. I do it because when people stand in front of me or sit in front of me and we have these conversations, they can look me in the eye and they can decide whether I'm full of it or not. And that's how this party's being built, because it's not a pile of BS. And so I challenge you to come out and listen. And I hope if there is a debate where Mr. Polyv and I are in the same room together, it won't be so curated that we can't actually have a real conversation about these issues. And we'll see.
Unfortunately, I doubt it.
We'll see.
They will allow it. The truth is not very popular within those people, and everything is controlled because they have created a totalitarian, in my opinion, soft police state. There is one question, and we'll finish with that, from the public, and it's coming from Jeff. What makes you, Grant, think that you are any different than Bernier?
Than Maxime Bernier?
Yes, that's the question.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm born in Alberta. I'm not showing up in Alberta from Quebec trying to sell a nationalist agenda in relation to Western Canada. I'm here. I'm here because I believe ultimately in the supremacy of God and the rule of law. I don't align with the libertarian ideology, which is ultimately humanistic, which denies the existence of the source of God. And people ask me all the time about the PPC, and it drives them crazy, my answer. I mean, if you deny the existence of the source of light, how can you fight against darkness? And I cannot live in a house that its policy framework is to deny the existence of the source of life, even if it allows Christians to become a part of the party. And I'll tell you why. I mean, no man is immune from corruption. We know that. We know the condition of the heart. And I'm doing this, Jeff, wherever you are, I'm doing this because I believe that this is what God has for me to do in this country, and because that's who I fear. It's not the temperamental sensitivities of Albertans or Canadians. It's that there's going to be a truth told. I'm going to be accountable for it. I'm going to do my best to tell it. But I'll tell you what, Canadians need to see what is actually going on in this country and be given the chance. They're being given a chance right now to do something differently and change their ways. And if they don't, I've done my job.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen and how this can get worse, and it will get worse. And Canadians are going to have to drink of that cup if that's the case. So Battle River Crowfoot is the most important battleground right now in this nation, in the battle between good and evil, deception and truth. And Canadians need to see that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this was unscripted conversation with Grant Abraham. I really, truly enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And please come. If there will be any debates, I doubt it. But if there are any meetings, please join, come, support, become part of this movement. I mean, if we will not change, if there will be no willingness for us to change, the change will never happen. So be blessed, stay strong until I see you again. Amen. And remember, lions do not bow before the hyenas, and we have already won. The enemy just doesn't know it yet.
That's good. Thank you for listening, guys.